Welcome into Cougar Tracks from Las Vegas as BYU basketball takes down the Villanova Wildcats 71-66 here in Sin City. I am your BYU insider for KSL Sports, Mitch Harper, and I was at the T-Mobile Arena to watch BYU basketball open the most anticipated season in program history with a big win over a Big East team in the Villanova Wildcats. And it was an electric atmosphere inside T-Mobile Arena for the Hall of Fame Classic here in Las Vegas. And it was the second game of a doubleheader. Arizona played Florida in the opening game, and Arizona fans were loud and proud for that game. And then BYU fans cranked it up in the second game to where it was a basic road game for Villanova. Even Villanova head coach Kevin Willard said as much in the postgame press conference from here in Vegas. 16,704 fans were on hand to watch BYU take down the Wildcats, and I'm sure a good majority of that crowd was so revved up to see the debut of true freshman AJ Dybantsa. And AJ, I thought, was excellent tonight for BYU. His first true game as a BYU Cougar. Yes, there were some exhibitions, but those don't count in the stat line. These games now count. And AJ finishes with 21 points, 9 of 18 from the field, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in 32 minutes of action. An area where he will want to improve. 2 of 7 from the free throw line. Even at the end of the game when he's kind of like smirking a little bit, you could tell he was a bit frustrated with some of those misses late from the free throw line for Dybantsa. But excellent game from him. And he set the tone, too, with the lob pass to Keita, the first points of the season. I thought that kind of embodies who Dybantsa is. He's a very willing passer. He has an impact on all ends of the floor. Dybantsa was everywhere. There were sequences in the first half where you're seeing him create contact and have a strong, difficult finish. And then on the other end, he's altering a shot, getting a rebound. Next possession on the offensive end, drawing a double team, finds his open man. The shot's missed. He grabs the offensive board, puts it back. Dybantsa was everywhere, and his ability to finish in the paint with contact, it's elite. It's something that BYU is just simply not used to, where you truly have guys at BYU, and it's not just Dybantsa, but you have a team where you can go isolation. Typically, when you have one-on-one basketball, like BYU kind of did last year against Providence, another Big East team, they did a lot of that ISO stuff. It didn't work with that team. This year's team, it can work. Now, I don't think Villanova is the greatest team on the planet. They were number 50 in the Ken Pom ratings coming into tonight. But still, I think they're going to be a solid team. I think they're going to be much better with Kevin Willard than they were in the years with Kyle Neptune. But it's a different look BYU team than what many of us are used to. And I think most notably, too, only 17 three-pointer attempts. BYU only knocked down 5 of those three-point attempts, 2 of which were from Kennard Moo Davis. He made his debut as a BYU Cougar, and his 2 field goal makes were from beyond the arc. In fact, all of his attempts were from beyond the arc. He ended up with 6 points on the night, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist in 34 minutes of action. BYU starters on the night. The opening night starting lineup, Rob Wright, Moo Davis, Richie Saunders, Keita, and AJ Dybantsa. Those 5 combined for 64 of BYU's 71 points. So in theory, BYU starting 5 alone only lost by 2 to Villanova. And there were stretches of this game where I thought BYU was going to pull away. There was a moment in the second half where BYU was up 14 points with 17:53 to go in the second half, and I thought that was the moment where BYU is just going to blow the lid off this thing and really take over this ball game. But then quickly, Villanova cut it down to 8, and remember at the end of that little period around the under 16 mark, Brennan had a slam dunk to kind of cap off a 6-0 run for Villanova to get them back down to only 8 single digits, which felt kind of big in the moment. And they had a little bit of exchange. Brennan and Keita extended his arms out, and it was a double personal foul. But I think that, Villanova kind of hung around, and BYU allowed them to start heating up in that second half, and that's something where BYU's got to improve. Bryce Lindsey for Villanova, he ended up with 22 points, 7 of 14 from the field, 5 of 9 from 3. BYU allowed Villanova to shoot 10 of 35 from the three-point range. Not the greatest percentage. You'll take 29% three-point percentage, but I thought in the second half is where Villanova was a lot more efficient there, but still they kind of faded down the stretch. But it was a game. BYU was up 14, but then at some point in the second half, you see Villanova, they took a 1-point lead with about 8 minutes to go in the game, and you're thinking, is BYU going to blow this? Because throughout the night, at no point did I think BYU was the inferior team to Villanova. And I think that's something that's a story in and of itself, that BYU is to a point where they're facing programs like North Carolina, like Villanova, national championship programs in the last 10, 15 years in college basketball, and BYU, kind of the new guy on the block in these powerhouse programs, they got more talent than these teams. And Villanova was trying to keep up with BYU. In many of these neutral floor spots over the years for BYU basketball, this used to be an area where BYU would be so tense, so tight. That wasn't the case with this group. I mean, AJ Dybantsa, Rob Wright, they're used to playing in NBA arenas. This is nothing new to them. And even for Richie Saunders, he got the experience of playing in NBA arenas last year in the NCAA tournament. So playing in these big stages is nothing new to this team. So I knew this group would show up and play quite well. And I also expected there would be some offensive lulls, and that did happen. Again, I think Kevin Willard's team is going to be pretty good defensively this year. I'm curious to see how Villanova kind of evolves over the course of this year. But I thought, by all accounts, for an opening night, game one, I thought it was a pretty good game. And I thought what was impressive, too, was that BYU is showing to you that it doesn't have to just be the offensive side. We know the offense is going to get rolling. There's going to be some games where they're putting up some huge numbers. It will happen. This team's got that ability. But I think what's also exciting is that you can win a tough game and show that toughness. Guys like Keba Keita, who were blocking everything in sight. The authority that Keba Keita blocks shots, it's impressive to see. And Cougar fans know what his abilities are. He's a gamer. Even Kevin Young said as much a couple weeks ago at Big 12 Media Day. But he always rises to the occasion and steps up for this BYU team. I love Keba Keita, what he brings to this group, and his toughness really shined. And even early in the game, they highlighted that toughness when he's on the floor battling for a loose ball, kind of saying to not only Villanova, but I think the country at large, because this was a spotlight game in college basketball, BYU's not going to get punked. BYU's not going to get bullied anymore, and they're not going to be finesse. Because I think typically, historically, with BYU basketball, you think finesse. And I thought tonight this was a tough showing from BYU, and I thought that they performed well in a complete 180 from the way that they performed last year against a Big East team in Providence. BYU was the aggressor tonight, and they were the better team, and they came out on top with a big win. Some other notes and stats from this game: BYU ends up shooting 39%, Villanova only 36%. The Cougars were 26 of 66 from the field, 5 of 17 from 3, as I noted. Free throw line, 14 of 21. That's about 66%. You want that number a bit higher. And again, Dybantsa going 2 of 7 doesn't help the cause. And Rob Wright, too. He was 4 of 6, but he had a front-end miss. He had some misses there. So Rob Wright's got to clean that up, too, on that regard. What I do like, too, BYU only 4 turnovers in this game. You think about all the possessions that BYU had in this game and the up-tempo nature that they like to play with. To only have 4 turnovers. They've got some excellent ball handlers on this team with Rob Wright, with Dybantsa, guys that take care of the ball. I think that's huge because there were stretches last season with this BYU team and program that they were coughing up the ball left and right. And to only have 4 turnovers, that was pretty impressive. BYU saw Villanova commit 11 turnovers, and that led to 17 points off turnovers for the Cougars. So that was a big difference in this game. And other kind of stats that catch my attention: 10 assists for BYU, 12 assists for Villanova. Points in the paint, BYU had 40 of its 71 points in the paint. Villanova only 24 of its 66. And then the bench points. Villanova 38 bench points, which, of course, 22 of which were from Lindsay. Only 7 for BYU. The bench scoring for the Cougars, Mihailo Boskovic, 2 points. And then Dawson Baker, 5 points, which was good to see Dawson because, he was pretty much limited during training camp practices with an injury. He's back and playing. That was important. BYU did not have Nate Pickens and Brody Kozlowski. They were not suited up in this game. A little bit longer timeline to be determined on Nate Pickens. So we'll see what on that front regarding Nate Pickens moving forward. But I thought this was a really impressive showing for BYU. And I think their pick and roll ability I thought was on full display as well. But I really like the passing ability from Dybantsa. And I like his physicality on the glass too. I thought that was really impressive. And that crowd wanted to see him shine. And it's not going to be a glamorous 30, 40 points every night. I think in that exhibition game against Nebraska, you see him drop 30. You're thinking that's what he's going to do every single night. As Fran Fraschilla told me over the weekend, he doesn't need to do that every night for this team. But he's going to be efficient. He's going to be effective every single night. And you saw a lot of national media at this event. There were, prominent BYU people here at this game. They wanted to see a show, and AJ Dybantsa, I think, gave them that show. And I think Rob Wright, too, 14 points, 5 of 16 from the field, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. You want to see that number go up a little bit higher. But still, I think that Rob Wright, his explosiveness in the paint, sometimes you almost think, does he need to slow down a little bit? Because there were moments in the second half where he kind of played at a little bit slower pace, kind of slowed it down a bit, let the defender come to him to draw the contact, and he hit some tough buckets in the paint. I love Rob Wright's ability, but sometimes you think, does he go a little bit too fast? Sometimes rein it in just a little bit, but like what he provided. I thought Hadim Mbop, 6 rebounds, no points for Boop, but I think he's going to be a valuable contributor to this team. 19 minutes of action kind of highlights the role that he's going to have for this team. The minute distribution outside of the top 5, it was pretty light for the bench. They relied heavily on this starting 5, and I think that's the right move because these are the guys that are going to carry this team throughout the year. Yes, when you have the games like Holy Cross this Saturday, Delaware next Tuesday, you can play that bench a little bit more. But for these big games, you got to have your starters shine, and they did that quite a bit in this game. The guy that had the fewest minutes was Keba Keita, but he dealt with a little bit of foul trouble, a little bit with 3 fouls early in the second half, so that opened the door for Boop to get some more action. He got 19 minutes off the bench. Baker had 15, and Boskovic had 12. Tyler Moroz, who was on a minutes restriction in the exhibition season, he only had 2 minutes. And then Xavier Staten, he had 1 minute of action early. He was the first guy off the bench, got to play in front of his hometown fans, and then he was quickly back to the bench. I don't know if it was the right matchup for Staten in this one, but I think down the road he's going to be a valuable asset for this BYU team. But really strong start to the season for BYU. The Cougars are 1-0, and next up for BYU basketball, they will be facing Holy Cross in the home opener coming up on Saturday night, 7 p.m. I will be in Lubbock, Texas, so I won't be covering that one. I'll be at BYU football versus Texas Tech, but obviously we'll be watching that game from afar to see how the Cougars fare against Holy Cross in the home opener. But good times for BYU basketball, and kind of the sights and sounds around the T-Mobile Arena for this one. It was interesting. The media, there was a lot of national media at this 2-game event here in Vegas. So the local beat writers, they didn't get the chance to watch both games, which was kind of unfortunate. Had to sit up in the very high nosebleeds to watch Arizona and Florida. But during the BYU game, I thought that was as loud of a building as I've heard a BYU game in my time covering BYU basketball, which spans more than 10 years now. That was a loud crowd, and they were energized. They were energetic. That was an entertaining crowd to see all that play out. And I thought, too, Kevin Young, he's very animated at times on the bench. He'll work the refs a little bit. The coaching staff and the whole staff had a new quarter zip look. It said Brigham Young with that little tiny font that we've seen on some sweatshirts and other apparel for fans in recent months and years. But this is a well-ran operation, and Patrick Kinahan was here in Vegas as well with the KSL Sports Zone, and he even noted, BYU has become a juggernaut under Kevin Young, and I agree with that sentiment because any game that they walk into, you feel like BYU has maybe the better personnel. They're not going to be ever outclassed in these games. It just comes down to executing and tightening things up, but to think of how still new this team is and coming together and being led by Richie Saunders and AJ Dybantsa, a freshman. Dybantsa is very mature for his age and the physicality that he plays with. I thought that was really impressive too. For Richie Saunders, I think it's still a little bit of a filling out, kind of identifying his role and kind of finding his comfort zone in these games. It's different going from the number one guy last season to now maybe a second option on the offense. But what I will say, too, is you did still see moments of vintage Richie getting downhill and attacking the basket. And then he also had a moment in the second half where bringing that great hustle, he goes out for a ball that looks like it's going to go out of bounds. He tosses it inbounds, goes off a Villanova defender. Villanova player can't gather it. It goes out of bounds off Villanova. Those hustle plays that Richie Saunders provides, he will always do that at such a high level. Saunders ended up with 15 points, 4 of 13 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3. You got to think the shots are going to start falling here soon for Richie Saunders. He's not going to have these sort of nights all the time. And when he gets his shot to start falling, watch out, because BYU's offense will take off, and it's only a matter of time. I don't expect this shooting, I don't even want to call it a slump, but just maybe some uncharacteristic shooting woes from 3. It's not going to carry on for too long, I would expect, because I'm sure they're going to start falling here very soon as they start to find their rhythm and cadence throughout the season. But it's been a good time here in Las Vegas. BYU 71, Villanova 66. The Cougs get it done over the Wildcats. More coverage on KSLSports.com, and we will be back with more Cougar Tracks on Tuesday with a full BYU football and BYU basketball talk here on KSL Sports YouTube and KSL News Radio, your legacy home of the Cougars.